The cafe was unusually quiet that afternoon. The faint aroma of espresso mingled with the sweet scent of freshly baked pastries, creating a warm, inviting atmosphere. Yet, for Dinah, the tranquility felt oppressive, each tick of the clock elongating her exhausting shift. She had been on her feet for hours, the ache in her legs a constant reminder of the long hours and the small tips she had earned so far. Meager coins tossed onto tables by distracted patrons glued to their phones. Dinah's mind was elsewhere as she wiped the last table by the window, her thoughts burdened by unpaid bills and an approaching rent deadline. Her manager, a woman whose tired eyes mirrored her own, gave her a look of silent encouragement, but it barely registered. She tied her hair into a tighter ponytail, took a deep breath, and grabbed her order pad, trying to shake off the exhaustion that weighed on her. The familiar jingle of the bell above the door startled her back to reality. She turned to see a tall, lean young man walk in, his presence understated yet commanding. He was dressed simply in a plain shirt and slacks, but there was an air of quiet confidence about him. Two men followed closely behind, their sharp gazes scanning the room, a subtle but unmistakable sign of security. Dinah froze momentarily, her pen hovering over the pad. The cafe wasn't the sort of place that attracted high-profile guests. Her curiosity piqued as the young man chose a corner table and settled in. Pushing aside her apprehension, she approached with a polite smile. "Good afternoon," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Can I get you something to start?" The young man looked up, and for a moment Dinah found herself struck by the calm, familiar demeanor in his gaze. Recognition dawned. This was Barron Trump, a figure she had seen countless times in news headlines. She swallowed the sudden lump in her throat and forced herself to remain professional. "I'll just have a cappuccino and maybe one of those croissants," he replied, his tone polite yet reserved. Dinah nodded, jotting down the order. "Anything else?" "That'll be perfect, thank you," Barron added, his sincerity catching her off guard. As she turned toward the counter, a strange feeling lingered. Was it nerves, exhaustion, or something else entirely? Little did Dinah know, this ordinary interaction was about to change the course of her day and her life in ways she couldn't yet fathom. The cafe had returned to its usual rhythm, but Dinah couldn't shake the odd energy that seemed to have settled over her. As she prepared Barron's cappuccino, the steam from the machine hissed, filling the air with warmth and a comforting hum. She worked carefully, frothing the milk to perfection, her hands steady despite the nervous energy twisting in her chest. "Why am I feeling this way?" she wondered, glancing over her shoulder at the corner table. Barron sat quietly, his posture upright but relaxed. Unlike most patrons, he wasn't engrossed in his phone or tapping away on a laptop. Instead, he gazed out the window, his expression thoughtful, almost serene. Dinah balanced the tray with practiced ease and approached his table. "Here you go," she said softly, setting the cappuccino and croissant down before him. Barron looked up and gave her a faint but genuine smile. "Thank you." "You're welcome," she replied, maintaining her professional tone. "Let me know if you need anything else." As Dinah turned to walk away, she couldn't ignore the feeling that his eyes lingered on her, not intrusive, but curious, as if he saw more than what was on the surface. Her heart fluttered unexpectedly, and she hurried back to the counter, berating herself for letting her emotions get the better of her. The cafe grew quieter still, save for the soft murmur of background music. Dinah busied herself with the usual tasks, cleaning tables, restocking sugar containers, and wiping counters. Yet she couldn't stop her eyes from wandering back to Barron. His demeanor was so different from the other customers, calm, introspective, almost as if he existed in a world separate from the one around him. Then she noticed something unusual. Barron reached into his pocket and pulled out a pen, leaning over the receipt as he finished his meal. He scribbled something quickly, his movements deliberate but discreet. Folding the paper neatly, he tucked it beneath the empty coffee cup. Dinah felt her curiosity spike, but she forced herself to stay focused. As he rose to leave, gathering his phone and coat, she managed to call out a soft, "Thank you for coming." Barron turned back slightly and smiled again. "Have a good day," he said, his words simple but carrying a warmth that lingered. The bell above the door chimed as he exited, and the cafe returned to its previous stillness. Dinah exhaled deeply, feeling the room's energy shift once more. She grabbed her tray and made her way to his now vacant table. The cappuccino cup was empty, save for a thin ring of foam clinging to its rim. The croissant plate held only a few crumbs. And then she saw it, the folded receipt tucked neatly beneath the cup. Dinah picked it up, expecting the usual, a polite tip and a standard thank you. But as she unfolded the paper, her breath caught in her throat. Dinah's hands trembled as she unfolded the receipt. Her first instinct was to check the tip. Wealthy customers occasionally left generous amounts, though they often felt impersonal, as if money could replace genuine human interaction. But what she saw was far beyond her expectations. Her eyes widened at the figure, a tip in the 4 digits. For a moment she thought it was a mistake, a number so generous that her stomach dropped in disbelief. Yet it wasn't just the money that left her breathless. Above the tip, scrawled in neat handwriting, was a message. "Your kindness and hard work don't go unnoticed. My family has been where you are. Stay strong. Brighter days are coming." The words struck Dinah like a wave, the weight of their sincerity making her knees weak. She read them again, slower this time, letting the meaning sink in. Her vision blurred as tears welled up in her eyes. She stumbled into the chair opposite where Barron had sat and clutched the note in her trembling hands. It wasn't about the money, though it would certainly help with her mounting bills. It was the words that carried a sense of empathy, of understanding, from someone she never imagined would notice her struggles, let alone acknowledge them so deeply. Hot tears spilled down her cheeks as weeks of exhaustion and worry seemed to pour out all at once. For the first time in months, Dinah felt truly seen. The struggles she had carried silently, working double shifts, skipping meals to pay her mother's medical bills, had somehow been recognized. The bell above the cafe door jingled again, jolting her from her thoughts. Dinah hastily wiped her tears with the back of her hand and tucked the receipt into her apron pocket as her manager approached. "You okay?" her manager asked, narrowing her eyes in concern. Dinah hesitated, her voice cracking slightly. "I'm fine," she managed to say, though her expression betrayed her. "Just a really generous tip." Her manager raised an eyebrow. "Generous enough to make you cry?" Dinah gave a shaky laugh and pulled the receipt from her pocket, holding it out. Her manager's eyes widened as she read the amount. "No way," she whispered, her disbelief quickly giving way to awe. "Who left this?" "Corner table," Dinah replied softly. "It was Barron Trump." Her manager blinked, stunned. "The Barron Trump?" Dinah nodded and pulled the note from her pocket. "It wasn't just the money," she added, handing over the folded receipt. As her manager read the message, her expression softened. For a moment, the usual sternness in her eyes was replaced by something more tender. "Wow," she murmured, handing the note back carefully, almost reverently. That's something else." Dinah nodded, folding the note as if it were a fragile treasure. "I don't even know why he wrote it. I didn't do anything special." Her manager studied her for a long moment. "Sometimes people just know," she said. "They see what others miss. You're here every day, working your tail off, always kind, even when it's hard. Maybe he saw that." Dinah swallowed hard, the lump in her throat returning. Her manager's words resonated deeply, echoing the silent struggles she thought no one had noticed. As the day went on, the cafe seemed to buzz with an unusual energy. Word of Barron's visit and the extraordinary tip spread quickly among Dinah's co-workers. At the pastry counter, whispers and glances were exchanged. A few baristas even approached her, eyes wide with curiosity. "You served him, didn't you?" one asked, her voice a mix of excitement and disbelief. "What did he say? Was he nice?" Dinah offered a faint smile. "Yeah, he was really nice," she replied, keeping her tone neutral. "Man, I'd have been so nervous," the barista said with a laugh. "That's so crazy." Dinah didn't elaborate. She kept the details of the note to herself, feeling protective of the moment. It wasn't just a story to share, it was something personal, almost sacred. For now, it was hers alone. But the quiet sanctuary Dinah sought was short-lived. By lunchtime, the cafe had taken on an entirely different atmosphere. A news crew parked outside, their cameras and microphones ready to capture the story. Reporters lingered near the entrance, speaking with her manager and scanning the cafe as if searching for someone. Dinah groaned inwardly when one of them caught her eye and gave a polite wave. "You're the talk of the town," one of her co-workers teased, nudging her playfully. "Lucky me," Dinah muttered under her breath. She ducked behind the counter, hoping to avoid the reporters entirely. Curiosity got the better of her, though, and she pulled out her phone. Social media was ablaze with headlines. Barron Trump's heartwarming gesture at local cafe, waitress receives generous tip, and inspiring note from former president's son. Her eyes widened as she saw the photo, a blurred image of the note and tip, clearly taken by someone at the cafe. Comments flooded the posts faster than she could read them. This is the kind of story we need more of. Barron Trump is a class act. I wonder what the waitress is going through. I hope she's okay. Dinah's stomach churned as she read the stranger's opinions about her life. People speculating about her struggles, her emotions, and even her identity. The vulnerability felt overwhelming, as though her private world had been placed on display for the world to dissect. The rest of her shift passed in a blur. Dinah dodged questions from curious customers, forced polite smiles, and kept her head down, wishing she could disappear into the background. By the time her shift ended, she felt emotionally drained. Slipping out the back door to avoid the reporters still camped outside, Dinah began her walk home. The streets felt strangely unfamiliar, as though the world had shifted slightly since the morning. She clutched her bag tightly, the note safely tucked inside, and tried to ignore the buzz of her phone as new notifications poured in. One message, however, caught her attention. It was from her manager. "They want you on TV, a morning show. Call me." Dinah froze mid-step, her heart sinking at the thought. She didn't want her face plastered across television screens. She didn't want to become a spectacle, yet a small voice inside her whispered that maybe sharing her side of the story could be worthwhile, not to talk about the money, but about the note, about kindness. The thought lingered in her mind as she reached her small apartment. Her mother, seated in her usual recliner, was flipping through the channels when a familiar headline flashed across the screen. "Barron Trump's act of kindness goes viral." Dinah froze in the doorway, her breath catching. The news anchor's voice filled the room, recounting the story in dramatic detail. Her mother glanced up, her gaze softening as she gestured for Dinah to sit beside her. "That's you, isn't it?" her mother asked gently. Dinah sighed and dropped her bag onto the floor. "Yeah, Mom, that's me." Her mother smiled faintly, coughing softly. "It's a good thing, you know. People need stories like this." "I didn't ask for it," Dinah muttered, folding her arms. "Sometimes the good things find you when you're not looking for them," her mother said, her voice full of quiet wisdom. "What he wrote, that was special. And people are talking about it because they need to believe in something good, something kind. You're part of that now." Dinah swallowed hard, her mother's words cutting through the noise of her thoughts. She felt exposed, yes, but also deeply grateful. The note wasn't just about her anymore. It was a reminder to everyone that small gestures of kindness could carry immense weight. That night, as Dinah lay in bed, the note rested under her pillow like a fragile secret she wanted to keep close. Her phone buzzed incessantly, notifications piling up as the story gained even more traction. She ignored them all, unable to face the whirlwind outside her small apartment. But deep down, she knew she couldn't avoid it forever. The note and Barron's gesture had grown beyond her, touching lives far beyond the cafe's walls. People were moved by the story, not just because of the money, but because of the message, the reminder that empathy and kindness could still exist in unexpected places. The next morning, after a sleepless night of contemplation, Dinah made her decision. She called her manager. "Tell the morning show," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "I'll do it." Her manager nearly dropped the phone. "Are you sure?" "Yes," Dinah replied, "but I'm not going to talk about the money. I want to talk about the note, about kindness, that's all." The interview was a blur of lights, cameras, and polite smiles. Dinah sat nervously on the couch, her hands folded in her lap, as the host leaned in with a warm expression. "Dinah, your story has captured the nation's attention," the host began. "A note and a tip from Barron Trump. How did it feel when you first read his words?" Dinah hesitated, her mind racing to find the right words. Finally, she spoke. "Honestly, it caught me off guard. It wasn't about the money," she said, her voice steadying as she continued. "It was what he wrote. I've been going through a tough time, and those words meant more than I can explain. They reminded me that someone saw me, even when I felt invisible." The host nodded thoughtfully. His note said, "My family has been where you are. Stay strong. Brighter days are coming." What do you think he meant by that? Dinah glanced at the camera, realizing she wasn't just speaking to the host, but to everyone watching. "I think he meant that struggles are universal," she said, her voice growing stronger. "No matter where we come from or who we are, we all go through tough times. And sometimes, when you're at your lowest, the smallest act of kindness can change everything. It reminds you that you're not alone." The studio fell silent, the weight of her words lingering in the air. The host smiled warmly. "That's a beautiful message, Dinah. If Barron is watching, is there anything you'd like to say to him?" Dinah's voice wavered slightly, but she smiled. "Just thank you. Not for the money, but for seeing me. For reminding me to hold on to hope. You made more of a difference than you know." When the interview aired, Dinah didn't watch. She didn't need to see the reactions or read the comments. Instead, she went back to work the next day, tying her apron with a newfound sense of purpose. The cafe was busier than ever, with patrons glancing at her in quiet recognition. Some left kind notes on napkins or offered genuine smiles. Others tipped a little extra, as if paying the kindness forward. For the first time in months, Dinah felt a lightness in her steps, a sense of hope she hadn't known she was missing. Barron's note stayed tucked safely in her wallet, a reminder of the moment her life had shifted. It wasn't just about the tip or the attention, it was about the power of small, thoughtful gestures. Sometimes, she realized, the smallest act of kindness could ripple out, touching lives in ways no one could predict. And as she cleared another table and smiled at the next customer, Dinah whispered Barron's words to herself once more. "Brighter days are coming." And for the first time in a long time, she believed it.